Hello and welcome to New People, New Ways, a podcast in partnership with Fresh Expressions Florida and Fresh Expressions United Methodist that explores new ways of being church through the stories and insights of scholars and practitioners alike. I'm Piper Ramsey Sumner, a layperson and cultivator of Fresh Expressions for the Florida Conference.
And I'm Michael Adam Beck. I'm the director of Fresh Expressions Florida and the director of Fresh Expressions United Methodist. And our guest today is Micah Blanks. Micah is the director of adult ministries at Trinity United Methodist Church in Gainesville, Florida. Can we give it up for the Gator Nation in the house? The true capital of Florida? No, just kidding. And Micah has a BA in humanities and pre-law from Bluefield State College and an MDiv from United Theological Seminary. Big props to all the United people in the house among our listeners too. And prior to Trinity, he has served as a licensed local pastor in the West Virginia Annual Conference of the UMC, where he was awarded the 2019 Martin Luther King Jr. Sharing of Self Award. That's a big deal, y'all, by the governor and Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs. And from Appalachia to Alachua, Micah seeks to live into his life verse, Micah 6:8. And this quote from Coach Phil Jackson, "Love is the force that ignites the spirit and binds teams together." Amen. So Micah, first, tell us, who is Micah Blanks?
Okay, that's awesome. Well, it's great to hear the bio and to think, oh my gosh, I actually do ministry. But thank you to both of you for having me on the podcast. Who is Micah Blanks? A pastor's kid, a friend, a preacher, and a sometimes theologian. I've been obviously a pastor's kid, so all my life I've gone to church and just kind of lived into this loving others. As you read one of my favorite quotes by Phil Jackson, love is the force that ignites teams and binds them together. And I just think that that's who I am, a person who tries to cultivate love and energy for all different types of people of walks of life. So yeah.
That's awesome. For our listeners who might not know Micah 6:8, tell us what that is and why it's important to you.
Okay, it's very important. Both of my parents, they love the prophets, and so for some reason they had all kinds of names going back and forth. And one of them was Michael, and then my dad kind of looks at mom and says Micah, and then she this is what they've told me about the story of it, was that she was the one holding me after he looked at her and said Micah, and then she said, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God?" And like from that moment on, it was just they set it forward and said, "That's your name." And I thought, as I got older, I thought, wow, what a hard verse to kind of, live into. Every day I try to do better, but I'm sure I'm failing, in all kinds of ways. So there's something to that idea of Wesleyan perfection, to press on towards the high calling of Jesus Christ. So that's what I endeavor to do.
Love that.
Yeah.
I also love the prophets. I think that's one of the things that kind of when, you have your like crisis of faith and throughout your life and that those kinds of things. Like, I think the thing that kept me Christian, that made me think, no, I think this is worth it. I think I'm on this side, was reading the prophets and learning about how God is on the side of the people that we often forget.
Exactly.
And so I also really love the prophets. I think that's so cool.
Well, and Piper, you're also a PK as well.
Yeah.
Are you still doing that podcast for Preacher's Kids? Because I think that would be amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't want to overwhelm you with podcast requests, but I was going to ask you after this one was done.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love for you.
Right.
But my podcast is called Pastor's Kid, and I interview fellow pastor's kids where we just talk about growing up in the epicenter of religion and what it's like to kind of see that through the eyes of the child of a clergy person who is always inside of the church, and one that's like kind of taking faith onto yourself as you start to grow up and put it into your own hands and those kinds of things, and how faith evolves and relationships evolve. So I really love that podcast. I love it.
Right. It
Yeah.
sounds amazing. Yeah, just everything I've heard. I haven't gotten to see an episode or listen yet, but yeah, I'll do some homework.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you definitely should. So I want to hear a little bit about, well, actually, I don't know if we did. Okay, this might be a question or not that we were going to talk about. But so you worked in small churches in Appalachia, where you're from, and then you moved to one of the largest churches in a large city in Florida. And so, what was that like for you? Was there like culture shock, and how was that transitioning from ministering to ministering in a different way and in a completely different environment?
Right. Well, it's it's ministry in a different way. There in Appalachia in West Virginia, I was a licensed local pastor, and here I'm a director of adult ministry. This summer, while Steve and Catherine Price are away, I get to step back into some of those roles. I'm doing pastoral visitation and all of that, but um, I think there was a culture shock because I still wanted to do things on that small church model. I mean, really small church. We just can we love each other through whatever the issue is. And I'm kind of thinking, oh, it'll come together on Sunday, but you can't expect something to come together on Sunday for 200 plus people. It needs to be in place and ready to go. Um, and in West Virginia, when I was at some of those rural churches, I mean, literally they would drive their ATVs or sometimes their donkeys or horses to church. And then, and it's very much so that very little one room community church that you could imagine. And then here at Trinity, we have rooms that I'm sure I probably still haven't been in, and I've been here for 2 years. So it says a lot to the scale of ministry that is possible. I think actually in both places. In rural ministry, there's some really poignant stuff that can happen. I think I can remember one time I was sitting there stirring molasses for about 2 hours with a group, and then we just like broke out and started to sing Amazing Grace. And gosh, that was one of the best worship services that I've ever been a part of. But here at Trinity, we do something called Drive Through Ashes. Our signs out on the front lawn say "Get your ash in here," and so it's really cool just to think about how different ministry actually is.
Yeah, so in West Virginia, I just earlier, I guess this is last year now, but had an opportunity to visit and go through there, and the developer was telling me that West Virginia is like super white. The population is super Caucasian.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, and I guess I didn't pinpoint on that, and I would say that 3 out of the 4 congregations that I served in West Virginia, they were cross-cultural appointments. I would say that by the time I was done at all 3 churches, though, there were people of all kinds of different nationalities, ages. It was very intergenerational. The churches grew in ways that I think it came from, that's probably why I got awarded the Sharing of Self Award from the Herbert Henderson office. I think I really put myself out there in the community and became experiential. The stages 1 and 2 of doing a fresh expression, listening, learning, loving. I was doing like all of those things. And it's really important to make sure we do that.
Yeah. So can you give us a couple snapshots of what that looked like for you, listening, loving, and serving? So cross-cultural appointment, missionary, immersing yourself in this new kind of context with a new kind of people. And
right. Well, okay. I mean, I've already given one small vignette, and it really is the molasses making was probably the second or third biggest fundraiser that this church did. I mean, it had nothing to do with their faith, but there was something that, community grew to love and almost expect from them. And so I'm out there in goulashes or boots up to my knees, never experienced this, out in a cow pasture, just stirring molasses, and we're having worship. I mean, really, truly, I think we did everything except for pass a collection plate, and there was a sermon, there was a word or a testimony, and it was just, and I say that word testimony, and it can be triggering for people, but really that's what it was, people sharing their journey of faith. Um, Another vignette, every Tuesday from 2015 to 2020, you could find me at the local, they called it a soup opera. We cooked food for some people who were experiencing housing insecurity. And I mean, gosh, the part that I loved the most was actually serving the food instead of cooking it. I mean, it was an all day affair. We'd get there. I say all day. We'd get there probably about 8 a.m. to 1:30, and just do lunch and be prepared to be there with the people of the community. And they would come and they'd say, well, this guy is my pastor. I don't go to his church, but he's really a wonderful guy. And so I think the soup opera was in a wonderful position in that they're nestled in this community that is kind of grappling with some heroin addiction and some things like that, and the police station is right across the street. And so I was able to kind of bridge that gap a little bit to help those people interact with the legal forces as necessary. That way it wasn't always a contentious environment when the police came to the soup opera. So those are two small stories. I think there are a bunch of others. We did one called the Radical Discipleship Academy of Appalachia, where we took youth from ages 13 to 18 and helped them explore their calling to ministry, all kinds of different things.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Florida, I think the people raise money with fish fries.
Oh, really? Fish fries?
Yeah. Bring fish. Like people, like the church that when I lived outside of Tallahassee, church, United Methodist Church I went to, they would have an annual fish fry, and so everybody be catching your fish and keep them on ice until it was time, and then they all fry them all together and sell them or give them away.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Gigi's Cupcakes, I'm not sure if you are, here in Gainesville. We have now Missy Neubauer. She is our new food hospitality coordinator, and so she used to make their cupcakes, and now she's in our kitchen. So I think our new fundraiser is going to be cupcakes.
Wow.
Yeah, like graduation cupcakes, birthday cupcakes, like
yeah.
Yeah.
That means that you get the leftovers.
Oh my gosh.
So you're lucky.
I'm trying not to. I've done really well with getting rid of my sweet tooth. So yeah, but she prepared some banana pudding for our lead staff meeting this morning. So
you're already down that road, the slippery slope.
Yeah, just go with it, right?
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned a little bit about the Fresh Expressions journey that you were kind of embodying when you lived in West Virginia. And then now you're working, like I said earlier, with this large church in the largest city in your part of Florida.
Right.
So what are some of the ways that you do or that you hope to challenge your congregation and to draw people from their pews and to empower them to be the church out in the community as opposed to trying to draw people in?
Okay. Yeah. So actually I got to lead the lead staff meeting this morning and shared with them the Eat, Pray, Love video that you sent to me. Where's that church? I forget. It's not Ponte Vedra.
Cape Coral, right south of Fort Myers.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. I shared with them that video and talked to the lead staff individuals. Actually, it was full staff. And told them about how Fresh Expressions isn't just going to come from the silo of adult ministries. Fresh Expressions can come from youth. It can come from, I mean, gosh, you name it. And there could be a fresh expression that comes out of it, as long as there is a person to cultivate the community through listening, learning, and loving. And so that's the big push right now. We're putting together a training that's going to happen at some point in the fall. For people to, that are a part of different ministry areas, they can come and learn and see how they can apply some of the principles of Fresh Expressions to their ministry area. Here in in Gainesville, we have obviously the UF Gators. I can't say go Gators. I've actually never been. I've been to one basketball game now. So, but
But you're being very cross-cultural,
yeah,
aren't you?
yeah, exactly. I have to. I'm in. I'm
You're in
in
the
the
swamp.
swamp, so I might as well. It's right. I've never done a chomp before, but yeah.
Come
Uh,
on.
yeah, I think here now we have two fresh expressions that we do that are really big hallmarks of what the Fresh Expressions team has put together. We have our trivia night, and our trivia team is Methodist to our madness. And we go and we partner with different teams and different people. It's very intergenerational. Actually, some of the students who are in residency for med school at UF, they love to come over and partner with us. Yeah, and even First Magnitude that puts on the trivia, they kind of give us a shout out every time. Hey, if you need a new team and you want to meet some wonderful people, and we just have some great conversation. And the other fresh expression that we have is called pop up in the park. And so we pop up in different parks, and we get to know people, and we really pair it with, what is this community needing right now. So we know that there are a couple of parks where they do track training, so we might provide some water, or we might go to another park where they're doing, where a kid, some event is, and we're doing popsicles or popcorn, since we call it pop up. And so it's a really fun thing just to go and partner with the communities and really just kind of get to know them in their space. That's the biggest thing. So, yeah.
Hmm.
I hope that answers your question, because you asked me, how am I challenging the congregation? I will say that when it comes to the inherited church, um, I tread lightly on who I challenge to go out and do the fresh
Mm.
expressions, because we really are in the space of least harm. And I say that with love towards anyone who would ever want to do witness. But Michael, you and Mike Moyna really coined that term witness, and as soon as you like kind of helped me with that, I really I held on to it, and I'm like, I can get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I want you, maybe one of you two can elaborate more on the witness versus withness.
Oh, Michael, that's you all day. Come
Yeah,
on,
let's hear it.
come on.
Well, and then maybe you can give like practical how you embodied this, but
You got it.
the key idea is before you can ever be a witness, you have to be a withness. And one of the major issues with evangelism, church planting, mission, pretty much in general in Western history at least, has been this kind of domineering, uh, uh, expansionist, colonialist, basically, way of being church, where it's like you go in and you take back the community for Jesus, or you witness to, and it's like a hit and run, and you knock some people on your belt that, someone prayed the sinner's prayer and now they'll go to heaven when they die. There's all of that stuff. And that's not at all what Jesus did or what he taught the disciples to do, but he was just living incarnationally with people, developing relationships, listening, cultivating community in the process of being about justice and the kingdom and healing the sick and liberating the oppressed and all those things, and building community as that was taking place. So witness gets us back to like, just go build relationships with people, listen to people, learn their stories, learn their names, love them, and build relationships, slowly over time. So that's trying to shift that whole culture around witness in this collapsed way of like, witness is just about going to tell people about our faith. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I liken everything to a hymn. I think probably full and lead staff here at Trinity, they probably get tired of all my musical references, like, and I'll reference Tupac or Biggie, or I'll reference like TLC, or oh my gosh, and so for this one, the musical reference that I have is the old hymn, will tell the stories. by and by. And I think it's nice that we tell the story, but everyone has a story to share. And so as long
Mm.
as we go and know that and listen to people, I think that
Mm.
there's more to learn from them than they can learn from us.
Mm.
One of my favorite professors, shout out to United Theological Seminary, but one of my favorite professors, she's actually passed away now, rest her soul, Dr. Emma Justice. She is so amazing. She just really taught me the idea of pastoral visitation. And it was that idea of withness, to really sit there and to not be afraid to allow the silence to happen,
Mm.
to listen and create the space, as a spiritual director would, for that person to really open up and get there and telling their story, sharing themselves. And so it takes a very patient person. It takes a very self-aware person. I mean, especially if you're doing it around trivia night at a, at a brewing company. I think you have to be pretty self-aware to say, okay, maybe this might not be. Um, I think I'm bridging the gap from witness to witness if I share too much at one time. And so, like you said, Mike, it is a big paradigm shift for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, because just knowing the history of Trinity, and it's where attractional church can actually still work a little bit, and there's just this history of like Odine Martin, and then Dan Johnson, and great preachers that were known to kind of fill the place up, with the preaching gift, and discipleship was very programmatic. We come to the church and we do all the stuff and we get formed as Christians, and then we go live that out. But I feel like how you're kind of leading the congregation is that, yes. And like you said, you're cautious with understanding where people's mental models are, but you're also pulling them towards this other idea too, like that church can go and be out there with people outside the church who are never going to come here.
Right. So I always tell everybody it's great that you bring up Odine Martin and Dan Johnson, because my office is called the Odine Martin Prayer Room, and so I'm kind of like, man, that's some big shoes to fill. Just when
Yeah.
you have an office named after someone. So, yeah, and so Trinity has a rich history of coming to this building. We got 65 acres here and another few acres across town. And so we have that rich history of coming here to do church, inherited church all day. We, what's the Greek for it? Is it claronomio? We are joint inheritors with Christ, but then to take it out into the world, that's so important. So, um, when I first got here, I did something called the spiritual formation assessment, where I took our core values: big-hearted, Christ-minded, spirit-led, and bound by love, and I kind of associated them with descriptors and scriptures, and kind of asked the congregation to kind of do a self-evaluation and let me know how you interact with that. And from there, it's not a score on your faith, but from there, I'm able to say, hey, well, have you thought about pushing the needle of your faith into this space? And so then we offer classes either here or out in the community that really push that needle a little bit further. And a lot of people have responded well to that. They've gotten great resources, or opened up, or joined a new Sunday school. And I think Sunday school for some people can feel like an antiquated model, but when some of these Sunday schools are doing dinner church at their houses, or they're having different meetings out, it's like the extracurricular stuff. It's not just Sunday school. That's a great model for small groups. And so,
Yeah, and I love how you're like leading the blend ecology in that way, and you have, what I would call the contextual intelligence, to see all that. And I feel like we too quickly dismiss the inherited church and all the deep treasury of resources, stories, tools that it brings. And I love Jesus' parable of the new wine, old wineskin, You don't put new wine in an old skin because it goes through the process. It will harden and burst the skin through that fermentation process. So you put new wine in new skins. But people forget the last part of his parable where and so both are preserved. So you put fresh wine in fresh skins, vintage wine in vintage skins. So both are preserved. And I feel like we want to blow up the old skins. Whereas Jesus actually saying, no, both of these things are really important. And he's working with an inherited tradition, right, that he's fulfilling. And so if a Sunday school can turn into a dinner church planter, those things still have value and stuff. So sometimes we're too quick to like throw rocks at the existing things without saying, hey, there might be a missional like underneath this really lively thing that could be reappropriated for the 21st century and might, connect people to Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's really good. That's a really good point. And the Sunday school that I'm thinking of, the Seekers, shout out to the Seekers here at Trinity. I think they have probably 45 members. And so it's not a small group by any
means.
That's
a church.
That is a Sunday school, and so they do well. I mean, they get together and they do all kinds of things. Whether they're deciding, hey, we're going to go as a Sunday school, help out at Fall Fest or help out at some of the church events. And so, and all of that is from a vintage skin doing something new. So, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's essentially the size of a congregation in most Methodist churches today. But
well, I was going to say it is the size of 3 of the congregations that I was at in West Virginia. So, wow. Yeah, they were just like so tiny, I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah.
But mighty, tiny but mighty for sure. They got a lot done for the Lord.
Yeah, there's so much value to those little churches,
Absolutely.
and that's what most of them are.
Yeah.
There's the mega churches that are in the big churches that might get more attention, but it's those little churches that kind of keep it going. And
yeah, I can't remember what the statistic was when I was in West Virginia, because I used to love to look at Mission Insight and a few other websites. But, I think it was like the small church. I mean, I'm talking less than 75 members made up 90% of the churches in West Virginia. You know what I mean? So it was few and far between when you're going to get to a worship that had 100 plus people. So,
yeah. Okay, before we move on, I have an analogy that I've been working on. So, and it works for Florida really well. So, like cypress trees, how they have the cypress knees that will pop up, and they are part of the root system. They're part of the tree, but they pop up, and then they really don't know exactly what the purpose of those little shoots are. But that's what it feels like to me. That's what like fresh expressions are. Because it's possible that the cypress knees help to aerate the tree roots to bring them air, or to like even to dry them out because they're so like waterlogged, or they create a barrier that catches like because of erosion and things like that, so it helps to reduce that. Or they help to anchor the tree into muddy soil. And I think that is such a cool thing that, Michael, you talk about this blended ecology, or you talk about these trees that people will, put together different kinds of trees all into one big growth. And I think like this, I was like, that's what a cypress tree is. They have these little shoots that come up and they spring up out of the water, and you're like, you might not even realize that this little, cypress knee that's across from the swamp is actually connected to this bigger, larger tree. And that's what it's like in, like the kingdom of God. We're all connected to each other, and we all serve these different purposes that keep it grounded and rooted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
is wonderful.
I like it. And I love cypress trees. They're like my favorite. They're so pretty. I like going out to the swamp. That's my favorite here in North Florida.
Well, you're talking about cypress. There's a brewery here in Gainesville called Cypress and Grove, and I don't think they have any cypress trees on their property. That's what I was thinking about. I was like, I can't believe that. But yeah, they are beautiful trees.
They need to grow one. That's probably hard. They have to have a bunch of water first, probably.
Yeah, they're all kinds of landlocked. There's no water.
Oh yeah.
Near them, unless it's deep
Mm-hmm.
down. Yeah.
I
I
would,
love that metaphor, Piper. That's good.
oh, good. Yeah. Write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a book.
Yeah, there you go. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about how how every like community is part of a larger community, whether it's geographically or like virtually. Because I think sometimes people feel it seems like the church wants to exist in like a vacuum, but it doesn't, you know. I mean, I think a good example, you guys keep talking about the Gators, even though I'm up here in Florida State country. But, you know, that's something that's like, that is part of the greater community of Gainesville or of that's part of Florida. And so, what do you think is the significance of a faith community being part of their greater community? And how can that be used as a way to serve that community and to create a proper kind of relationship that is fulfilling and hopeful and brings life?
Oh my, that's a big question. I think for me, just keeping the conversation exactly where we were, it's that it's the vintage skin of saying, hey, the church has always kind of been one of, let's say, the communal gathering points. It's a place where people come together, and so I think a church that shows it's kind of focused on the needs of the community, involved in the community, visible in the community, is number one seen as a place that's so accepting, so open and loving. During COVID, Trinity actually opened up its campus, and probably thousands of people came and got their COVID vaccine here. You talk about being a part of the community. That is, to be able to open up your doors and say, "Hey, if you haven't gotten your vaccine yet, let you come over here." And for this side of town, there really, unless you were going at that time, unless you were going to, your drugstore, there really weren't that many opportunities or spaces to get your vaccine. Um, so for me, I still just think that even though it's a vintage skin, I think opening your doors and being in the community is just so important, just to be that communal safe place. Yeah,
It's good.
that's what I see there.
It's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, so one of the things that we say in Fresh Expressions is church can happen anywhere, right? So talk a little bit about what that means for you, and then you started to walk us through a little bit of some of the Fresh Expressions you have going, but
Yeah.
like what would somebody experience in one of these communities if they were joining in with you?
Okay. Joining in with us, since everybody, I love this question because people are always asking, well, what do you do at Fresh Expressions? One of the
Mhm.
first iterations of Fresh Expression here, we went to another local place, and we got a room in the back, and we had a little worship service back there. And I wanted to have a little bit of a shift from doing that, because that's not so much among the community there, and that's not me knocking the Fresh Expression that was, but I just thought I want to find a way to be with a community that we don't reach very much. And so if you look at Trinity United Methodist Church, the space, the people that we don't reach very well, I don't want to be in competition with Gator Wesley, but it is the college age or young adult. And so that's why we targeted First Mag. And so when you come and you're engaging in um, we call it First Tuesday, but now we do it on the first and the third Tuesday. When you engage in trivia night, you'll come and we have our QR code, and we kind of tell people, hey, we're Methodist to our madness. We let the name kind of speak for itself, but we're not leading to say, hey, we're all from a church. This is just our team name. This is what we're doing, and so that idea of withness permeates everything. So we're going to get to know you, invite you into our community, and along the way, this through witness and kind of just getting to know people, conversation, you'll hear and get to know, okay, well, you work at the church, you go to the church, and so some people will hold on to that and maybe ask questions. They'll pocket that for later. And so we usually look for ways to open the door for a conversation on faith background, or where are you at in your path? Because one thing that is for certain is that we recognize that everybody is in a different path. And so our team is very intergenerational, and it is very, it's it's a team of people who I think come from all kinds of different walks of life. And so there's going to be a person there who I feel very confident in helping you pray or think about your faith journey in a different way than you probably would at the inherited church. So we're still very much so. I think the listening, learning, loving, those stages, I mean, we do those constantly. I mean, and so, you know, that first group of students who were the students and residents, they're graduated and moving on and going to different places now, and so we're still there as our team, and so we're looking for, okay, well, what is that next community that we can insert with and be a part of, and so it's I really like to think of it like valence electrons. And this is so nerdy. Like if you think about a chemical combination of things, you know, electrons, they want to be in full shells. And so we want to have a full shell. So we invite people in and we share our gifts with them as they share their gifts of trivia with us. So, yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
I've hosted some trivia nights before, just like separate from Fresh Expression stuff, but it's super fun. I love doing it. Coming up with questions, and then it's fun to host it.
Yeah, we don't host. Thankfully, First Magnitude does that, but we are talking about, because everybody's like, "What is this Fresh Expression thing?" And some people are like, "I'm never going to go to the brewery to do that with you." And so we serve Wednesday night dinner every Wednesday. One of the next ways to get people involved in the Fresh Expression is to begin to have trivia night at our Wednesday night dinner, so they can kind of see what we do, so that we can model it for them. So that's on the horizon at some point. We'll have questions like, what years did O.D. Martin preach from, you know, or, you know, just different. So there will be like a Trinity section and a scripture section. So it'll be a whole lot of fun for sure.
Nice.
Cool. I like that.
Michael, did I answer your question? I don't know that I...
You did. And I was just wondering, because, I mean, I've heard someone describe Gainesville as like the University of Florida, and people live there, right? Like the whole city is a university spread out, you know, it's a university town. And it sounds like you're actually connecting and engaging, but that's also, there's transience to that in some sense, with the students flowing in and out. And the whole kind of, a lot of industry and jobs and stuff being built around that. And also I've heard people describe it as pretty post-Christendom, or like church averse, like definitely people open to spirituality, but don't talk to me about church. Is that, describe for us kind of the culture a little bit, and how do you navigate all that?
Okay, so Gainesville is the swamp. I lived in West Virginia, and I didn't experience the South until I moved to Gainesville. Let me just say that, and let you all marinate on what that might mean. I think, I mean, I'm going to be very honest. When I moved to Gainesville, I saw a stark contrast, literally, from east to west on how people are living in different demographics. There are large food deserts on the east side of Gainesville, but yes, it is the home of the Florida Gators. So the Gators, the school is a land grant institution. I actually think it is the largest land grant institution in Florida. I'm not so sure, but I'm pretty sure it is. And because, like you said, it's very sprawling throughout. So a lot of highly educated people, and yes, it is very post-Christendom, very church averse. And so when it comes to Fresh Expressions and talking to people in the community about their faith and engaging it, I mean, I hate to say it, but in order to get to the conversation, you kind of have to talk about everything around the conversation, and then then you kind of land there to say, okay, and so what is your comfort level with talking about your faith? And it doesn't have to be a church. And I've actually found that even in West Virginia, I have a gift for, and I don't love this gift, but I have a gift for talking with people who have been harmed by the church and kind of helping them kind of walk through that. I mean, and we know that harm happens in churches. And so when those people find themselves engaging in the fresh expression that the church has helped to provide in that space, they're kind of almost not shocked, but in a way they are. They're kind of thinking, "Wow, this is on par with what I need in my faith journey, and it meets me exactly where I am, and it's a low ask." So yeah, with Gainesville being such a very it's a very diverse town, and yet a lot of similar needs across the community. So
That's good. Yeah, one of the striking things about Gainesville also is like that unfortunate history of racism and segregation and redlining and all of that.
yeah,
So yeah, there is, I think, multiple kind of Gainesvilles really, and so with so give us like, so you are able to have these conversations with people who've been hurt by the church. What uniquely prepared you for that? Like, is it just a spiritual gift the Lord gave you? Was
oh
it
my
being
gosh.
raised as a pastor's kid? Did you have some kind of experience yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that listening is the spiritual gift that God has granted, and I would say that growing up as a PK, I mean, you see all kinds of things that you're kind of like, oh wow, I don't know how people deal with this, or how they have that expectation of your faith journey. I mean, I don't know if I've shared this, but my dad was actually a Baptist pastor, and so like I come from the tradition of like handing out Bible tracts and stuff like that. And I kind of thought, oh my gosh, even as a kid, I was like, I'm never going to do this. You know what I mean? Like this is just not it for me personally. So yeah, just I honestly think it is because as much as I do love God, I would say that I have also been the product of some church harm as well. I think that if we're very attuned to it, or I am at least pretty self-aware that there have been some things probably being told not right now for ordination, or there are just some things that happen in the life of the church that I could have walked away several times, but it is so not about this building, these four walls. It is so not about, what conference it is. And I know I'm saying that on something that is like, you guys are Fresh Expressions UM, but I am such a person of let's follow Jesus and just love people. That's why, I mean, again, that Phil Jackson quote, love is the force, and it's so important that, like if I could Anakin Skywalker people with the force, like with a hug, the force would be love. And that's what I would share with people constantly. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think that more and more church hurt is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be seeing and experiencing, and a lot of pastors and ministers and are going to kind of be faced with needing to learn the language of it, needing to learn what things can harm people and what are triggering, and own up to the fact that there have been things that the church has done in the name of Jesus that has hurt other people, in repentance, being willing to repent for it. We got to interview Elaine Heath and Charles Kaiser, who wrote a book about basically about this, but it's called was it called, Michael?
Trauma-informed evangelism.
Oh, wow.
Trauma-informed evangelism.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to read this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they talked about how you witness through, I guess is withness, right? Just witness through listening and through walking alongside somebody. And I think when we're able to do that, to bring it back, this is something actually I wanted to talk about earlier when you guys were talking about the withness and learning from people's stories, and how you might think that you're going to be the one that's going to change somebody's life, and then you actually get to know them and they change yours.
Right.
And I think, like, if you're open and willing to understand that you don't have all the answers, because nobody does, and also the person across from you might have some incredible insight or something that can change you and that you need to learn. And when it also requires you to be humble, and I think that that might be something that's hard for some church folks and leaders and things like that. It's not an easy thing to hear, to be humble and to be willing to, like, not just listen, but like really listen. There's like different levels of listening, the kind of listening that can transform you and that will make the other person realize that you see them as a whole person, as a valuable person. There's so much that's, I don't know, it's one of the most important skills that I feel like I'm still trying to learn all the time, is how to really listen to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so big, just because when I did that spiritual formation assessment, in the bio for that, I had the definition, for spiritual formation, and, to be conformed to the image of Christ for the sake of others, that sort of thing. And from there, you have to relinquish control. You have to be able to say, okay, God, you have to be able to let go and just let God be God. And yeah, that listening aspect is so huge in that.
Mm-hmm.
Going in your prayer closet, that's kind of old school. For me, it's going for a walk outside. So yeah, that listening aspect is huge.
Yeah.
Well, Micah, I know that you also work with students at the seminary, spiritual formation, and how do you help cultivate that in others? Like, maybe I'm asking this selfishly for my own. It's obviously a spiritual gift that you have personally that you use in ministry constantly. But how do you help other folks, students, or maybe some of the people you're working with in the local church, cultivate that gift of deep listening?
Okay, so I don't know if it's just from um, prior coaches or teachers or people in my life, but one of the biggest mantras in my life that I've always heard is, you can't listen without being silent. As a matter of fact, they have the same letters in them, and it's that sort of thing. And so whenever I'm doing spiritual direction with someone, I almost kind of ask them to enter into um, that space of silence with me. Like, let's just sit and hang out for a little bit. Pay attention to your body, see what you're feeling, take a couple deep breaths, just at your own pace. Like, let's have a conversation. But if there's space for silence there, allow it to happen, because we need to slow down enough to listen to what our body is saying, what our mind is, what we're thinking of, before we just respond. Sometimes you may hear something that's a trigger or an impetus for something in your life, but it might be 2 to 3 days down the road before you even realize or have heard exactly what that person says. And so the biggest thing that I do is invite people to slow down and to listen to themselves, listen to God, and listen to others. I think for a lot of people, when we get into that sort of a conversation, it can be very disarming, actually, for them to think, "Oh my gosh, I can't verbal judo you right now. I can't, I can't win this. It's not. We're not. He's not inviting me to have some theological debate." Because there are some people who will just come straight in my office and they're like the great debaters of theology, and it's just one thing after another, and so when you give them that space of, here's a smile, and let's laugh and just love one another in this space. I think that's how I do it. I mean, it's all based on just kind of like meeting people where they are. Justin LaRocca, Jim Harnish, they have their tools, A Disciple's Path, and I teach that class probably 3 times a year now, and I think one thing that I learn each and every time that I teach this class is wow, every single disciple is so different, and your journey is going to be that way. So we have to allow for the variety of difference, and yeah.
That's good.
Silence. That's good. That's really good.
True. Inviting it
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
Listeners join in. That's
Mhm.
good. So last, one of our last questions that we ask everybody every time. What does the future of the church look like to you, and what is your hope?
Oh my gosh. What does the future of the church look like? Are we talking Church Universal, or are we talking United Methodist Church?
Capital C Church.
Wherever you want to go with it.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Yeah. The future of church for me definitely has been, gosh, for the last 15 years, I've just been seeing it move this way towards fresh expressions, to where the idea almost doesn't even seem fresh anymore. I've been telling all of my congregations for years now, like, hey, they're having baseball practice or baseball games while we're in worship. Why don't we just go over there and do something with them? And so in West Virginia, we had a little sign that we put up every now and then at the church. The church has left the building. We're out doing this or that, and like really going with that model of trying to be the church. And I think that's where the church needs to go. I don't care if it's United Methodist Church or any of the other 10,000 Protestant denominations. I think it's just so important that we go be with the people. That's what Jesus did. Enough of the behind the door meeting. This is for the elect few. If there's anything that the Gospel of Acts taught us, it's that it's for everyone, literally. So, yeah.
You answered this very humbly, but I do see you as the embodiment of Micah 6:8.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. That really does. It means a lot.
Yeah. I love your ministry. Keep it up. We're all growing in sanctification.
Right.
I like the minor prophets, right? And so Micah is cool. I think Jesus had that like minor prophet kind of edge. But my guy is Amos.
Oh.
And Amos was like the little nobody from nowhere who didn't really have the credentials and didn't have the pedigree and didn't come from the priestly family. But he like squared off with the religious powers and was like calling out
with the nations, right?
He was calling out the high priest at Bethel, and they were like, "Get out of here with that stuff." But he was like, "I'm just a tree trimmer and a shepherd, but the Lord sent me to, do this." And and I think that like to be able to bring the kind of thinking and ministry and the prophetic voice that you bring to a church like Trinity, which has been super over time, pretty institutional, attractional, programmatic, all those things, and be able to lead that culture in a different way. That is the embodiment of a Micah 6:8 stance. So
thank you. Awesome. Thank you. I mean, that's what they called me, and that's what the job description said too. Number one, reimagine discipleship, and number two, really reintroduced the language of Holy Spirit and spiritual giftedness. And so when you put those two together, it's through God, all things are possible. So,
amen.
Yeah.
So what's coming up next for you? What are some things we can look for, and how do people connect with you online? What's the best way to get connected with you?
So I do devotions for Trinity every Tuesday at 8:30 ish a.m. It's supposed to be 8:30, but sometimes Facebook is a little it's out there Facebooking, So I think so that's the best place that I think you can find me. Connect with me online. Also, I do LinkedIn. I'm not so much of an online person. My presence there is really just through the church. But what's next for me? I think I'm seeing Trinity as my toolbox to do God's ministry for quite some time. And so we're here looking at this idea of, it's called Feast with Friends, and it's another way of just doing dinner church throughout the summer. They meet once a month, and it's a really good idea of just we've got a forum that's got all kinds of questions. Do you prefer intergenerational things? Do you want to go out to eat? Do you prefer a potluck? And it's all about getting these people intentionally together to create relationships just across the church, because we do experience a large influx of new people. And when we get those people together, I think it'll be great. More small groups, more things will come. What else is coming? Also coming alongside Feast with Friends, we're having a contemplative and Enneagram expert come and do a guest lecture here at the church. Her name is Jill Schneider-Smith. She is ordained in the North Carolina Annual Conference. And so, it's going to be an amazing time. I think we're going to do that on June 24th. So, yeah, those are some of the things that are up and coming for me. So,
nice.
I was just talking to somebody about the Enneagram. It's a good one, I think. Yeah. They're not all those personality tests. None of them are like perfect, but I've always related so much to my number.
What are you?
It's weird. I'm a 9 wing 8.
Interesting. Okay, I'm a 1.
Yeah.
1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Close to you on that circle. It's just the other direction.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I'm a 1 wing 9. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
And I'm a 8, aka a 8-hole. With
oh my gosh.
with the 7 wings. So
the 7 wing, that makes sense too. That's funny. Enneagram's
the Enneagram
cool.
is really cool. And we've got this huge contemplative culture that's growing here at the church. And so I'm just Jill, she's gonna have a conversation on how each of the 9 types interacts with a contemplative lifestyle of worship and praise and discipline. So it's going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. So
that's cool. Very cool.
Micah, is your online posture, is that like a spiritual decision, or is it just somebody your age typically
has all over social media?
Right.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. So I want to say it was one Lent, maybe a decade ago. I was like, I'm going to give up Facebook. And not only did I not give up Facebook, but everything else was created in the interim. You know what I mean? Like all the other social media was created in the interim of that 10 years. And so I was just kind of like, I never really got off. I know how to use like pretty much most platforms. I know how to use them, but I would say that it's just not my, I'm such a, I would say I'm probably vintage in that I like to have a relational conversation with people, kind of one-to-one, in a person, in person. We could get tacos together or something. Like I'm just that kind of person.
Awesome.
Yeah. I you can find me on LinkedIn. I know it's like a professional space, but for some reason, like that's the one that I've really stuck with the longest. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. That's the one. I think I have a page, but that's all.
Right. And most people are like,
yeah. Awesome. Well, and any closing thoughts?
Thank you all for having me on this podcast. Can't wait to see this and many more episodes, and maybe join you on the PK podcast as well.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
It's awesome. It's been a day for me. I've done this podcast and led full staff and did my devotion this morning at 8:30. I'm like, man, I don't know what's happening. So, yeah.
Well, glad you made it here. Willing to talk to us.
So willing.
Yes. Awesome. And to those who are listening, thank you for joining in on this episode of New People, New Ways. If you enjoyed our conversation with Micah, please share it with a friend. And if you want to, give us a rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you want to learn more about Fresh Expressions, you can check out freshexpressionsfl.org and find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. See, we're on all the social media.
But not LinkedIn, though.
Not LinkedIn. I don't know. Well, maybe we'll have to do that.
The professional community needs Jesus too.
True.
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time on New People, New Ways.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.